what I first want to ask you to get things going is, what do I have to know about you to understand where I want to go with this episode? What are things that we would like to know about you, or things that you would like to share, just to give us a little bit of background about you?
Hi, Isaac. Thank you for having me. Well, I'm Sasha Laghonh, and I'm the founder of Sasha Talks. And I believe we could explore the whole idea of creativity and finding the creator within us. Because the more I started reflecting upon how the idea of creation has been in the forefront of my career path, but overall in my life. So whether you are a man or woman, a parent, an educator, a writer, a speaker, an artist. There's so many byproducts of creation that as everyday human beings we enjoy on earth. It could be from somebody who is a chef bringing people together over the concept of food. I know I am a global music junkie, so it doesn't take much to bribe me to listen to different cultures, different languages. And it overall you think about what are people creating? What is the purpose behind it? Is it to deliver joy? Is there an ulterior motive? Or do people just create for the sake of creating? And I believe that it resides within each one of us. So it doesn't come with a title. It doesn't come with a status. It doesn't matter what labels we're born into or whether we were born into a lot or less. Creativity is priceless and timeless.
And I really love where this is going, because I believe the same way. I believe everybody has some sort of talent. Everybody has some type of creativity within them. There's this big phrase, I guess, I don't know if you've heard it, where it's like the earth without art would just be and it's like the words art. And that is very true. It's like everything around us is very creative. Somebody created that, whether, like you said, it's a chef who created their masterpiece of food and things like that, or a painting like a Picasso painting or something. And so I resonate with that, and I really 100% agree with you that everybody has that creativity inside of you. What type of creative are you? How did you establish yourself as a creative? What creative avenues have you taken?
Well, since childhood, I've been creating, but I never gave it a thought that I'm a creator. But I recognize that people around me would speak to me as I'm a creator. I was introduced to art from a very young age that I started drawing. For some reason, I had this affinity for creating flowers, just taking paper mache and all of that. And then I went through the space of being fascinated with eyes and drawing eyes. And everybody they would look at it as they're the same eyes. And I go, no, each eye represents a different type of window to the world. And then I started painting, oil painting, I would say still art. And just organically during my childhood, of course, being a student, some of my work would get submitted to art competitions. And I started reading and ranking. And I still started producing art, but at that time, I didn't care about the reward of what happens after you create. I just created for the sake of entertainment, mental escape. And then I also transitioned to doing calligraphy. Being a Sunday school girl, we used to have art competitions there, and you would have to apply your creativity if you participated of how to uh, celebrate the divine creation of the earth. So I would do a calligraphy, and I would do it in English, and then I would also do it in foreign languages such as Arabic. And then, of course, I kept proceeding and started writing, tried out photography, ended up being the editor in chief of one of my high school magazines. And at that time, we didn't have all of the technology that we have right now, where everything is graphics. So I had learned how to do all of that manually.
I
And
think
then I'm trying to think. Uh, by the time I had graduated and moved on to my next part of my academic journey, I recall being contacted by Columbia University, and I came to learn that one of my magazines had ranked. So you just start noticing that all I cared about was creating and not worrying about what happens after creating. And nowadays, when a lot of people want to create, they get hung up because of social media and they're thinking, what reward will I get? Will I get a like? Will I get a comment? Is it even worth taking this picture? So I didn't go through that mental gymnastics. I created just for the sake of it. And recently I started reflecting upon it and I want to go back to that level of innocence where you're just in the creator mode. You're not thinking about what happened before, you're not thinking about what happened after.
And I love what you mentioned in the beginning. There's a lot to uncover right here with what you just said, and I want to go back to the very beginning of, when you were drawing different eyes, and each eye is different, each one opens up a new window. What did you mean by that? And kind of like my follow up to that is, what do you see in artwork when in all these different types of creative avenues that you take in? What is your creative eye like?
My creative eye is I look for I know a lot of people have an affinity for color, but there's something very old school traditional in me that at times when I would have dreams, I would dream in black and white. And the beauty about a black and white picture is that the focus is on the subject and not the details of the color. And the details matter, there's a time and place for it. But sometimes a black and white picture to me views as you cannot miss the object that is in there. You can't miss your target. When you're looking at a colored picture, my eyes could go in the corner. I might be staring at a leaf on a tree and forget that maybe there's Buddha sitting on the ground, right? So it's amazing how you can look at a picture and pick up various types of details. And going back to earlier, what you said, what was so different about all of these eyes, if you're not an artist, you might not look at each eye being different. It might be what I was feeling that day that made me draw that type of eye. But for somebody who just is looking at things very literally at face value, they might go, oh my God, a whole book on eyes? I don't get it.
And and I love that. So I want to follow up on that one, as far as when you also were saying that you pursue different avenues as far as photography and you started writing and things like that. My question to that is, and I mention this in almost every episode, is when you start up as a creative, when you start up in becoming an artist, a painter, a photographer, a filmmaker, actor, model, whatever it is, a lot of times you don't get that support, right? A lot of times people always tell you, hey, you can't make a living off of that. There's no money in it. That it's like, what do you think about that? Did you have that support when you were growing up, and the avenues that you were taking?
So art for me, for the most part, was more recreational and on my personal time. And on rare occasions, I would get hired to work private parties and provide the art work, or whether it could be body painting, face painting. But there was a short-lived period where I also thought of applying to the top art institutes because I wanted to become a designer. But that desire was not that strong at that point because I had many other creative portals, how I was applying my creativity, that I didn't feel that I have to have a mainstream career in art that will pay me. And therefore, I organically gravitated towards business. And if I had not gone to business, I was going to become a pediatrician and I wanted to work with children, but I was already working with children through other portals of teaching. And I told myself, I don't have to become a pediatrician in order to have interaction with children. There are many different ways of going about it. That business made the most sense to me at that time between statistics and economics. And then I transitioned to going to a business school. And I told myself, no matter what I do from here on forward, I have the core tools to customize it towards any idea or organization that I might end up working for at that time. And at that, of course, times have changed. It's been over 2 decades. But given my upbringing and that going to college was the best option. Is that meant for everybody out there? In my opinion, no, because there are some people who just have the resources and the tools that they already know. Okay, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go to trade school. I would recommend that if you have a passion and you really see yourself doing it every day, it can't be any more rewarding that you get paid for it. For me, there was a bit of a more formal, structured track that I followed. But then I believe that when you discover your higher purpose, you learn how to take your existing knowledge and go out and create it. And Going back to you mentioning about different types of art, it was a few years ago, I was listening to a scriptwriter talking about talent and skill. And he said talent is something that we're born with and we get to refine it. Skill is something that we could go out and acquire and learn and then keep improving it. So I would say the art part has always been some hidden talent within me. I didn't go to art school to make it happen. But if you want to keep developing your skill, I would definitely encourage you to.
You answered a very interesting question there that I've always had was a lot of the times you it goes back to the resources, and I don't know how to structure this question, but it goes back to the resources that you have when you're growing up. A lot of people don't have those resources of having the best material or the money to create their dreams happen, but somehow they still make it happen, and a lot of them go through struggles. Did you the first part of that question is, did you have those resources growing up, as far as like, one, for sure, the support, to the people helping you out in creating what you wanted to create or get where you wanted to get? You seem like a very ambitious person. Did you have people there as role models or figures that would help you to where you wanted to go?
In terms of people and emotional support, I've always had it from my parents. And in terms of guidance, I discovered that if you don't make it known that you're interested in learning more, then how will a professional out there be able to either guide you in the right direction? But when it comes to literal resources, as in money, I have a good giggle when people think that, her father must be rich or she's a trust fund baby or a silver spoon in the mouth. I am completely the opposite of that. And I knew that if I wanted to pursue anything past high school, I would have to go out and discover the avenues, get creative. So I've been working from a very young age of earning pocket money, going out, taking private opportunities through word of mouth, and even worked through college. So that itself took creativity of, okay, I'm starting at ground zero or below. And in order for me to actualize the next milestone in my life, how am I going to come up with the resources? So basically, you're taking out money, and I don't want to use the word gambling against yourself, but if you really believe in what you're going to do, then you are going to get the return on investment. But if it's somebody who's wishy-washy and you're just feeling it, I would say don't make any investment until you're sure. And that's the thing about people nowadays. I notice they want to guarantee that their idea will work out. And there are no guarantees in life. I often say, we're born and one day we are going to transition. Everything that happens in between, it's our creativity responsibly to bring ideas to life. And I will say from experience, there are going to be ideas that take off, and then there are some that won't take off. And you have to strike that balance between making a living and earning a living, because there are people who come up with great ideas in business or just generally speaking, but they fall in love with their ideas so much that they're blinded, that they can't think straight to create and continue creating. They get stuck at one milestone of their creation, that either the idea stagnates or they're challenging the universe of prove me right or prove me wrong. And I'm not going to do anything until life will meet me halfway. And part of the creativity is that you have to take the risk. It says faith, believing in the unknown. As long as you believe in your vision, that is what matters. And I often say that to people when they come for counseling, that you need to get behind your decision instead of, it will not matter if 1,000 people out there support your decision and you don't believe in it. It has no value. Just like that with anything that you create, it will remain timeless and priceless. Because when you look back, you won't have a regret. And it doesn't matter if there are a million people creating the same thing. I believe there's a specific messenger and vision that has its unique DNA. And you put it out in the universe, and the right people will connect with it. Now, there's a catch. We don't get to control the timing of it, right?
Right. And one of the things that I want to go back to is, um, I really like to make this very relatable when it comes down to um, people listening to this episode or people listening to this podcast, something that they can relate to with the guest that we have on. And so I want to touch a little bit about when you were growing up. Like I said, you didn't have that person that or that people that gave you that spoonful of, like, or having the best in life. You had your struggles, and so what were those struggles for you, and how did you overcome those? Or was there ever a point where like you had to make a really big sacrifice, but it was well worth it at the end, but you kind of were undecisive at that moment?
Well, I have made, I would say, some unconventional decisions that a lot of people who live a comfortable life or have the credentials would not. Now, I the one thing that I always had was the spiritual and emotional nourishment that came from my home base. And I'm very fortunate for that because that emotional nourishment is more valuable than somebody handing you the money and doing it all for you, but then you're hearing crickets. Now, my family remains to this day very uninvolved with what I do, but they're situationally aware. And that's a good thing because you don't want everybody in your creative process commenting. And I don't go looking for opinions. I just do as I'm spiritually guided. Now, in order to make these ideas work, while other people were investing their time in their social life and all that, after fulfilling my day to day commitments, I would invest my time in teaching myself how to go out, build websites, learn what are the mechanics behind doing that. I actually started out with speaking. If you had told me that over 20 years ago, that one day you're going to be speaking to strangers, I would be probably hiding underneath a desk. I'm not that person that you would be making eye contact with, calling on me, having me read out loud. I was not that person. But I knew that in order for me to fulfill my purpose, I would have to connect the dots by putting myself out there, going outside of my comfort zone. I don't believe I would be able to create at least 85, 90% of the stuff I've created if I was in my comfort zone. Going out there, putting myself out. I remember when I put myself out there, some of the ideas started taking off at such a fast pace I couldn't keep up with demand. Now, that's a good problem to have, but then my own self development also needs attention. And I had to pace myself because I wasn't ready to meet that demand at that time. People want to piggyback off your limelight and your success. And a lot of the people that were seeking me out, I just saw the irony. They were not exactly grade A material. So you have to be very particular about you are the gatekeeper of your creation in a good way, in a responsible fashion, because you're creating a home, you have a table, and you want to invite people that understand some degree of what you're doing. They don't have to understand everything in order to respect it, but I do believe that there has to be the whole idea of coexistence and creativity. I don't believe two people could come up with a creation and one is better than the other.
What do you think about, well, before I ask this question, if there's something that you could have told your younger self, something that you know now, what would you tell your younger self when you were first getting started?
This is something that I've discovered more through my writing process, and it could be applied in other parts of art. That don't wait till the product is perfect, because your definition of perfection is going to be different than my definition of perfection. Get it out, produce it to the best of your ability, and you could always refine it. Because then, when you're waiting for that perfect moment or when you are satisfied, you might never release that creation out there. Whether it is a 2 hour talk, a 3 hour class, it could be it could be anything, or that song that you're writing and it's sitting in the back pocket for 5 years because you're waiting for that one perfect word. But what about the rest of the song that we could listen and appreciate? And when you get the word, you just pop it back in and release a upgraded version 2.0.
Now, I'm gonna go back a little bit, and when it comes down to this, is something that I always thought about when when I first went to school was I used to go to film school, and then I ended up stopped going to film school because one thing that I didn't like was that they would always, even though you thought your work was something really good, everybody liked it, there would be the instructor or the professor who would give you a grade point average of like an A, B, C, or D on your work. And a lot of that times that can kill an artist's motivation, a true artist, a creative who might have produced something good and in their eyes and it's their creation, but they're being critiqued by it. What do you think about that whole aspect of, an artist kind of pursuing an educational route or going out there and doing hands-on or learning on their own, as far as when it comes down to that criteria of having to be judged by your artwork by one certain person?
I think letting one stranger or so-called professional dictate how far you will go in life is very dangerous, because having crossed paths with many different types of formal and informal circumstances, I've come to learn that no one is going to know me as well as I do. And as long as I know what my objective is and my mission, I have to be at peace that there are going to be people who may disagree with my vision, or they might not understand it. Therefore, they're going to be critiquing it based on what they know. That goes a little bit similar to making business decisions out there. If the person lacks life experience or a very diverse approach to living life, they're going to be very critical. They're going to view me as something very black and like I agree with it. That's perfectly fine. That is the beauty about life. We all have the freedom to think and feel as we do. But I find it to be very dangerous if a young next upcoming creator gets deterred because a professor said that I don't quite like how you write. I think you should be writing more about this. And they start directing you towards genres that are not your cup of tea.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what was what's a story of yours where you struggled maybe through something? What was one of the hardest, I guess, routes that you ever took to do what you're doing now?
I would say it had to do more with creating bandwidth, and the one thing I take pride in it is that I let the whole aspect of Sasha Talks organically evolve, and it was spiritually led. That I knew when I needed to pace myself and work on my development, and then I came back with better content. And I knew ahead of time that even though people love that sheer entertainment of live shows, people calling in with questions and all, I was not getting that emotional satisfaction out of it, because then the same people start calling in, excuse me, questions about their life, and they're not heeding any guidance that is being dispensed. And you don't want to set people up as in a very reactionary mode. And when you're creating and you're living life, you want to be responsive. You need to figure out, when do I react? Do I really need to react? And then when do I respond? And for people who create, I would like to believe that they want more of a response than a reaction, because everybody will react, they'll have an opinion about it, but you want some type of feedback or insight that you could work with. And it will make you think that, hey, I never looked at my own work that way. That's very intriguing. Maybe I'll approach it a little bit different, and it might serve as inspiration. And of course, with creativity, there's always going to be people who don't understand the whole idea of art, different aspects of art, and they're going to go, this cannot be an artist who has 30 years experience and they drew that, and they're going to poop all over it. I believe it's important for the artist to be grounded and not to let that type of negativity start building the noise in the back of mind. Because when fear comes into play, you're not going to create well. Because then you start creating for that one person who is critiquing you. What about the rest of the world who has the maturity to extract different parts of your work and enjoy it?
Absolutely, I completely agree. It was cutting off a little bit, so I don't know if you had to stop, but I guess the next question after that is, what was some of the opportunities? How did you seek opportunities? A lot of that's something that a lot of creatives that we've gotten a lot of feedback on is how did you create your opportunities and how did you reach out to go and get those opportunities?
Okay, so in my case, I know what rejection is in the broader limelight of life, meaning whether it comes through the business lane or just generally speaking. And it's a blessing in disguise because a lot of things that I desired, either the opportunity wasn't there or it was not the right timing and the fit. And I believe life works in circles where those opportunities came around over a decade later, and I was not the same person who desired them. So I decided I'm just going to go out and create it myself. So even if it's going to be one person listening out there, I'm okay with it because I did it because I needed the practice of getting comfortable just talking to strangers, online, offline, more in person. Therefore, I look back and I go, okay, I've made progress over the last 15 years. And depending on the type of work you do, you're going to either put in the effort or you might not feel incentivized. But the type of work I do, I'm more in the people business. And I'm not someone cut out where once upon a time, where you could be in a cubicle all day long and not know who are the other people that you're working with. Like, that's such a foreign idea to me that being around people, it gave me more practice. So what did I do? I didn't wait for an opportunity to be given. I just went out and created it myself. And it was a self-imposed form of homework that I'm going to be interviewing people. And in order for me to get comfortable with it, I'm going to learn a bit about them. And that's how I made it here.
And that's very interesting because I always in every episode and every listener that we have, we always get that same question of, you know, how do you step out of your comfort zone? Or it's a very scary route, you know, especially when you're kind of navigating yourself as an artist. It's you're not gonna have it. It's kind of like entrepreneurship, right? Like you're not gonna have that end line that you're gonna cross and then everything's gonna get better for you. It's like that line could be very, very far, but it's
Right. That you don't see the benchmark. You don't see the benchmark, so you have to go based off gauging of, okay, today was a great show. The energy was high. I was engaged. I really cared about the topic. And that's where I started becoming more picky about the type of topics that I wanted to focus on. I didn't want something that gets a high rating. To this day, I don't know what the ratings are. I always assume that they're going to be somewhere in the black hole. And I leave it that way because when you start focusing on the numbers do matter if you are working for a third party. But I created it. And in order for me to create, I have to come up with the resources. How did I come up with the resources? I work. And that's the thing. When you become the creator, no matter what you give birth to, no one could take away that badge of honor. No matter what happens to my work out there, she was a creator once upon a time. And I believe it's no different than when a mother gives birth to her child. No matter what happens, the creator remains. And even though she is the creator when the child comes through her, that's the beauty about life, that everybody is creating in different ways.
absolutely, absolutely, I agree. And you mentioned something very interesting, and you mentioned this in the beginning, was the amount of like you don't have that high expectation of something because that could kill your motivation for creating something if you expect it to get hundreds of likes and hundreds of comments and thousands of views. A lot of times it's not going to be like that when you're starting. And so what do you there's two kind of aspects to that there are two different questions that I have to that is one, what do you think about that? How do you mentally prepare yourself for reaching the goals that you want without having to look at that? And then what do you think about having to be on the digital space as far as like social media and stuff like that to promote your work and the impacts that can create?
Well, I'm smiling because when Sasha Talks came out, I did some of the marketing on social media and stuff, but believe it or not, over time, I realized that investing my time on social media was not worth it because that's not where I get my return on investment on. And the type of people that typically come onto the platform is through word of mouth. And this is even before social media took off, believe it or not. Sasha Talks started off as a grassroots campaign through word of mouth. And a lot of the legwork I did it myself because I don't use third party representation unless it's for a corporate engagement. Therefore, I was the one putting myself out there. I'm going out there, speaking on various topics, and then engaging people. And then there have been certain speaking tours that I've done virtually and in the recent years in person. And through that, people come to learn of it. And you also have to keep in mind that what are you creating and who is your target audience? Therefore, I personally am not on social media. And I know that there are people who inquire at times and they don't like the answer because they look at it as what value does she bring if she's not on social media? Because they've been so heavily conditioned to think that if a person has 6 million people following them, then the eyeballs and the ears are going to be there. But nowadays, things are deceptive. People could buy followers, people could buy praise, people could buy critique. So, how could you know what is real and what's not real? Now, I'm not here to feed skepticism, but I'm not too heavily invested in social media. But that does not mean that I don't put myself out there if in money for a cause or and sure there are you and there are people who do this full time to send you a message out on social media. For me, I remain grassroots and there's something about it that I'm not willing to let go. That is the beauty of it, that it grew through word of mouth. The chances are higher the right people will seek you out, not just people taking up bandwidth to inquire about stuff when they're just killing time. Because my rhetorical question would be, think about all the people who are spending on their phone. The phone is great because it connects all of us, but how many of them are going to be transacting with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree to you. I think social media and being online can be either a blessing to you or it can be something that can destroy you as far as like your reputation and things that your mental capacity. I think mental health is something that's very important as well.
Absolutely. And I believe in the recent years, there are professionals who comment about, are you on social media? And I tell them I currently am not. But if there is a professional engagement, there will be some reference to it. Now, I don't want to live my life looking through a lens or a camera, unless you're a photographer and you're capturing the beauty of life. But I want to be in real time and enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if there was one piece of advice that you received that you would like to share that really helped you, what would that piece be?
Absolutely. Be yourself and the right people will find you. And I always remind people that I'm not offering perfection. And as I go through my life experiences and development, I have no shame in saying, okay, maybe 20 years ago, I viewed this sort of experience or topic differently, but I have a different view on it. And it's healthy to grow and change because sometimes you cross paths with people who haven't seen you in a long time and they go, no, you've changed. And change is not a bad thing, but I tell them I have not changed. I've grown. I've always been the same person. It's just maybe the lens through which I view life has shifted a bit. But I always say, just focus on who you're becoming. Don't apologize for who you are. And don't turn into just another replica. Don't try to fit a mold because then your creativity is going to get thwarted. And it's more fun to meet people and learn about them. There has to be the it factor. And I believe all of us have some it factor.
I love that. I love that you said that because a lot of people they think that they have to be just like a certain somebody in order to make it. And I completely hate that because it's like everybody is so unique in their own way. Everybody has their own vision or alignment on where they're going. And so when somebody tries to replicate somebody else, it's it's not, one, it's not original, and then two, it's just you got to be able to be yourself. So I love that you mentioned that, and that you shared that.
And there is a difference between imitation and emulation. Uh, you could emulate for the better, but don't imitate people. One, not a good idea from a business standpoint, and two, you're just going to become somebody else, and it's not worth it. I don't believe there any you cannot put any price on willing to change yourself. And on a broader level, if I may, I had commented, I think it was a week or two earlier, where I talk about be yourself and don't get caught up in trying to become somebody else to make a to make or mend a means to an end. You know, the opportunities in life come from the divine, the creator, the source, whomever people believe in, but it doesn't come from people. People are the messengers. It may come through a person, but don't put people on that pedestal